What is up, beautiful people all around God's green earth? Hope that you are having a blessed day. And I greatly appreciate you for tuning into our live stream here right now. All praise be to the Most High. If this is your first time here on the Moneypot channel, make sure you check out some of our content. Subscribe, hit the push notifications, and check out some of the content that we have. Here on the Moneypot channel, we have a library of educational content created from a God-first perspective. The content provided here on the Moneypot is designed to improve viewers' knowledge of world economics, cryptocurrency, personal finance, and much, much more. Please know that the information provided here on the Moneypot is not considered financial advice. Let's get into our discussion tonight. We see the title of the message, Why It's Hard Building Wealth in America. Got a few things to talk about here. And I'm going to try to stay focused on the topic at hand. But this is a very broad subject. And I'm mainly going to be talking about what inflation has done to our assets, to the wealth that we are seeking to create. Now, we have to take it from a high level and then start low. That's what I like to do as I am just thinking about what is going on in the world. All right? We're going to be talking about inflation. We're going to be talking about consumerism. We're going to be talking about preparing for what is to come. And we know what is to come because of the Most High's word. That is vital. We know that Yahshua is coming back. The sky is going to crack open and Judgment Day is coming. And it's important that we read the Bible in its entirety and understand what God's word says. Now, here in the United States, we are living under a system that is prophesied about in the Bible. Many people don't like to believe it, but we are in Babylon. And right now, we are seeing Babylon being judged slowly but surely. We're seeing various events take place that make me realize that judgment is over this land for its idol worship, for its treatment of God's people, and for unrepentance and just giving into paganism. Now, there have been quite a few that have been able to create wealth in America. Likely because of giving into the pagan ideologies. And as you look back in the Bible and understand what was going on in Babylon, you see this king, Nimrod, who sought to exalt himself above the Most High God. And he starts creating this Tower of Babel, where he's seeking to get up to the heavens. It's funny, as we're seeing here in the 21st century, man attempting this very same thing. We're seeing organizations such as NASA start to utilize technology to being able to reach the heavens. Space, they call it. We're seeing individuals like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk putting billions of dollars towards initiatives, towards funding colonies on other planets, and having rockets that can take them there. But I want to stay focused and talk about why it's so hard to build wealth here in America. So, first off, we have to understand that many of us were not taught on how to create wealth. And where does that stem from? It stems from this guy and his group of people that do not want for us to be educated. This guy is John D. Rockefeller, who created the General Education Board. We see this was back in 1915. And he created this board in order to develop a society of people that think a certain way. You see, John D. Rockefeller, we learned about him in history class that he was this oil tycoon, but he was not just in the oil industry. He had his hands in many different industries. He was in medicine. He was in oil. He was in education. He was in many different industries. And his reasoning behind starting this General Education Board was to control the way people think. And here's a quote by John D. Rockefeller in regards to starting up this General Education Board and what he wanted out of society. He says, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." Very interesting. And that goes back to my previous statement on how we are not taught how to create wealth. We're not taught the basic tenets of personal finance, especially not in the Black community. But even the majority of the general education system is not teaching us personal finances, how to get around taxes, how to build businesses, how to develop an economy, but rather just be cogs in the wheel of an existing economy. He says, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. People that are just going to get up, work for 40 years, and then when they hit 70 and they spent all their good years, now they might have a little bit of money. And with this money, they can give a little bit to their children and they can spend the rest on all the goods and services that I've created." That's what Rockefeller was thinking. We're also not taught about the monetary system that he influenced in forming. Now, I can't necessarily say that it was just Rockefeller that built this, but you think about some of the other tycoons of the day. Think about J.P. Morgan Chase. Think about Carnegie. Think about the Vanderbilts. Those are all tycoons in the early 1900s that had millions of dollars, probably billions, and were able to form a society that allowed for them to benefit and to stay on top. Then we see the creation of the Federal Reserve. All these things happen. And now we're to a point to where these institutions are starting to crumble. Why? We're going to get into that. We see back in 2022, U.S. inflation hits a new 40-year high as price increases spread. The price of everything was rising back in 2022. And prices are still continuing to rise. And we have to be mindful of these things. Now, inflation from an economic standpoint is not necessarily a bad thing. Stable, low, and predictable inflation is ideal. We see the Federal Reserve, they're shooting, they shoot for a 2% level for inflation. year over year, per year. But it's when we see inflation start to get out of hand is when it becomes a problem. Now, what is inflation? The basic definition of inflation is the general price of goods and services increasing across the economy, which reduces the purchasing power of a currency and the value of certain assets. All right? Now, one reason why it's hard to build wealth here in America is because since the 70s, currency has not been backed by anything besides the full faith of the United States government. And that's problematic. You see, what inflation is a hidden tax. It's a tax that we don't realize that is going to eventually come due. We see here, John Beckley says, inflation is a form of hidden taxation which is almost impossible to measure. It's almost impossible to measure because it's hard to find out where the costs over time are coming from. And this is what makes it hard to build wealth in America. Because when you do start to develop an education, and I'm coming from an individual who was licensed in the financial industry and understands these personal financial principles of invest your money, compound interest, build up a portfolio of stocks that over time, over the next 30 years of you investing, is going to grow and appreciate. But you realize that that system is tied into inflation. It is tied to inflation because of the currency that it is based in. And with that being the case, we have to take that into account with how we are seeking to build up wealth. As we are transitioning into this new financial system, please know that the traditional principles that people utilize to get wealthy are not going to be the same as this new financial system. And I don't think a lot of people are realizing that. The same way that, back in the 60s and 70s, and how individuals were able to build wealth by just having mutual funds and index funds and just putting their money in the market and allowing for it to grow over time, that's not going to work the same way in this new financial system. And that is because of inflation. That is because our government is devaluing our currency at a rate that is astronomically higher than it has been in the past. And we have to realize that. I do think this is just part of the judgment of Babylon. We see in Revelation that it talks about hyperinflation. Revelation 6:6 says, "And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil." This is referring to goods costing a day's worth of wages. A denarius is a day's worth of wages. And what are we starting to see? The increasing prices of food all around the world. Ukraine is the second largest exporter of grain in the world. That's one reason why prices are going up. But let me not get off on my tangent. De-dollarization is happening right before our eyes. It's happening right before our eyes. And what do we do? First off, we have to realize what this issue is. It's inflation. How do we know that this is inflation? We can tell that it is inflation because as we look at historical data, we see what has happened over time. We see how the dollar's worth has lost its purchasing power over the last 100 years. Because we've seen how the United States dollar used to be backed by gold, and now it's not. And we see how the Federal Reserve and the United States government, who's in the bed with them, has developed this monetary and fiscal policy that's unsustainable for a currency that is not backed by anything. We see back during Obama's years how there was ridiculous amounts of quantitative easing, which is essentially just printing out more money. Printing out money recklessly. And then we see when COVID happened and how there was even more reckless printing of money. So this is a problem for anybody who has assets that are tied to the United States dollar bill. And that's really all of us, as many of the publicly traded companies on the United States stock market, on the New York Stock Exchange, on the S&P 500, on the Dow, all utilize the United States dollar bill. And we're seeing its purchasing power diminish. Now, there are certain companies that are going to grow in value because of the value, the use case that they have for the world, like Nvidia recently. But certain goods and companies that produce these goods are not going to be able to remain profitable, which means that the share price goes down, which means that your dollar loses value. You see how the dominoes keep rolling? So we must be mindful of these things. It's very important. Now, we have an understanding of the problem to an extent. Let's go a little bit deeper. We see here the consumer price index, which does help to us to understand inflation and where that number comes from. The consumer price index is, by definition, a measure of average change over time in the prices paid by consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. So we've got a basket of goods. We've got food, energy, and other items, minus food and energy. And we see how these prices have changed. So in May, the consumer price index for all consumers was unchanged, seasonally adjusted, and it rose 3.3% over the last 12 months. Not seasonally adjusted. The index for all items less food and energy increased 0.2% in May, up 3.4% over the past year. So what does this mean? It means that over the past 12 months, the price of goods rose 3.3%. Okay. That doesn't sound terrible on a lower scale, but on a higher scale, it starts to make a difference. Let's say if you're trying to get a piece of gum that costs $1, a pack of gum costs $1. 12 months ago, it's worth $1. Today, worth $1.03. Let's look at it for $100. So you're going to buy some goods that are $100. Worth $100 a year ago, now it's worth $103. You see how this has the effect to, over time, increase the price of goods, to making it to a point to where you're not able to keep pace with these rise in prices. And then you couple in the fact that the majority of people just have money sitting in a bank account that is not growing at any sort of rate, 0.00001% in their checking or savings account. It's a problem. And it's one reason why we talk about having assets that retain their store value. I'm not going to get into that right now. But we're seeing these changes, and this is a problem for what people are dealing with today. And what is a solution to this problem? Well, first off, turn to the Most High. Turn to the Most High. Pray. Seek His face. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Yahweh. And we need to realize that there is a problem going on right now in our economy. Things don't make sense. And when things don't make sense, that means that something bad is on the horizon. What is on the horizon? Pain. Shifts in the economic landscape. And what does the word tell us? It tells us, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Now I'm gonna digress a little here, because we need to talk about this. We need to be cognizant of the fact that it's time to start preparing for this hyper-inflated economy, this hyper-inflated United States dollar bill. The simple pass on and are punished. Do you want to be part of the simple that are punished for not being diligent at this time? I don't want you to be. Be prudent and realize the things that are coming with this United States economy. We must foresee the evil that is coming. Prepare accordingly and not be simple. Elijah, what does it mean? What do you mean by being simple? What could that mean? Being simple in our personal finances right now could just be not diversifying. Being simple in our personal finances could just be your only market account being your 401k. Being simple in your finances is letting all of your money sit in your checking and savings account and accrue 0%. That's being simple. Now, on the flip side, what does it look like to be prudent? Because we know evil is coming. We know Babylon is being judged. What does being prudent look like? Well, to me, what it looks like is a couple of things. It looks like building a diverse portfolio of assets that are going to retain their store value. So yeah, you can have a 401k, but don't put all your eggs in one basket, because that 401k is tied to the stock market, and the stock market is tied to the United States dollar bill. Start developing a diverse portfolio. I'm talking precious metals. I'm talking certain digital currencies. I'm talking real estate and equity in companies that are providing cash flow. But something all the more tangible, that's more weight, that has more of a real world impact to your life is having goods that are going to be able to help you survive. And I'll be honest, I watched a little bit of a video today that was on should believers be preppers? And I firmly believe so. If we say that we believe in the Most High's word, we should be preparing for what is to come. And I do believe believers should be preppers. And why do I say that? Because we can clearly see the writing that is on the wall with this United States economy. We see the petrodollar agreement end. We see inflation at its highest levels in 40 years. We are seeing all of these warning signs. The United States economic dashboard is lit up. The check engine light's on, the tire pressure light is on. The fluids are almost empty. And with all this being the case, yes, it's important to have those assets and portfolios that are going to be able to outpace the United States dollar bill in its purchasing power. But you can't eat silver and gold. You can't drink your 401k. So something else that is going to have an extreme amount of value is supplies. The way I heard it said were beans, Band-Aids, and bullets. Having food supply is extremely valuable. And let's say you start preparing your food supply of dry goods, of rice and beans and goods that you can eat. That is one way that you can allow for your dollar to keep pace with this loss of purchasing power. Because guess what? We just saw that the CPI is raising 3.3% year over year. You are able to purchase a certain amount of food right now with your $1 bill or your $10 bill, your $100 bill. You purchasing it now rather than in the future is saving you money and is also providing an overall benefit to your life and your families by you realizing these times that we're living in. Same with water. I think it's amazing that you start to build out an asset portfolio, but when stuff hits the fan, you're gonna need food, water, medical supplies. These are goods that are going to be in high demand. If you don't have them, you're going to be doing anything to get them. And I'm talking, we're going to see the crazier parts of society. So we must realize these times that we're living in. We literally just saw last week how hackers hacked all this data. Could hackers hack a grid and shut down a grid for a certain amount of days? What are you going to do in that case? Your United States dollar bills, they might be worth something, but food and water are going to be able to keep you from dying. And that's what's actually important. So realizing that as you are preparing for this judgment that is to come, it is coming over this land. Utilize the resources that you have at your disposal right now to start developing a storage of food and water, as well as protection, so that you can protect your food, water, and other assets. When I say protection, you know exactly what I mean. I don't know if I can even say the word here without being banned. I don't have too many people watching right now, but YouTube is always listening. Making sure that you have protection to be able to protect you and your family, dadgummit. And also medical supplies, because they're not going to be as accessible. And this is how I think about it for myself. I've got my emergency funds. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, Elijah, what would best suit you right now? Would it make sense to not have as much money in your emergency fund and have additional supplies on hand just in case stuff does hit the fan? Does that make sense? Hmm. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that does make sense, brother. Because that emergency fund money may not even be accessible if stuff were to hit the fan. We just got to be real with ourselves in our personal finances and realize that yes, like money in the bank is great, and having certain assets is going to be great, but that's not going to allow for us to survive. And Yahshua tells us that man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And with that being the case, we need to put our faith and our trust in the Most High above all things. Get into a season of fasting. Do it. Start decreasing the amount that you're eating. Seriously. You know, I like memes. I predicted inflation would explode. Wow, kiddo, how much money did you make? I bought gold and Bitcoin. Smart kid. Smart kid. Why is that smart? Because these are hard, tangible assets. And as we're seeing the governments getting alignment, start to devalue their currencies and whatnot, all the central banks are moving towards stacking up precious metals. Go check out some of our past content where we talk about how much these central banks are purchasing gold in the tons. Go check out some of our past content where we talk about these central banks moving towards central bank digital currencies and implementing them into their economy. It's important to realize these things now. What does the word tell us? A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Come on. Come on now. So many people are going to be punished for not being diligent. And look, if you want to call me crazy right now, that's fine. Call me crazy. But when stuff hits the fan, don't call me. Because I've been putting out content, trying to wake people up, trying to get people to realize that dadgummit, something is on the way. And it's best to prepare now rather than when stuff hits the fan, because it's going to be a whole lot harder. People are going to be running around like chickens with their head cut off. And that is not going to be good. You're not going to be trying to figure out what to do. I believe that those that prepare now, not only physically with building up, storages, supplies, and having assets that are going to be able to be sustainable over the next 20 years or so. But also spiritually, building up the endurance. Blessed is he who endures till the end. And that's what we have to do. Go check out some of the content we put out with this diversification and diversifying your portfolio and understanding how important that is. Because tough times are coming. You don't want to be caught lacking. Seriously, you do not want to be caught lacking. And I know that this system that we're living in is in this transition phase towards this new financial system. I'm sorry if I may speak with a sense of urgency as if it's going to happen tomorrow, but I realize that it's not. It's a slow drip. When you look at things, society would turn up if the mark of the beast was introduced tomorrow. People would not be having it. But slowly over time, the elites have to condition us to these new changes. Think about it. We are slowly seeing the phasing out of cash. I mean, COVID happened 3, 4 years ago, and we still see cash around. But now we're starting to see coins not be accepted. Now we're starting to see people not being able to get change for cash. So many people don't even use cash anymore. That's just one example. But also we're starting to see, like in Whole Foods, palm reading being a form of payment. How many people have Apple Pay on their phone? How many people have the RFID chip in their debit card? We're moving so much more towards this tap system. And it's a slow, slow drip. These things can't be implemented overnight. Because if so, people would not accept them. I do think there's going to be some catalysts that start to usher in this new financial system and this total switch all the more. But certain aspects have to be slowly trickled in. So what do we do? We be mindful of these times that we're living in. And we make sure that we are purchasing goods that over time are going to be bringing value to our lives. Listen, we live in this consumeristic society, and it fuels so much of the debt that we take on. If you are getting into debt, make sure that it's over something that is going to be bringing economic value to you and your family's life. Don't just be out here buying 1,000 pair of shoes when you can only wear one pair of shoes at a time. Think about what is going to help you sustain your life. Seriously. Think about things like that. Would I go into debt over buying beans and rice and preparing? Yes, I would. I'd be over time be paying off that debt because the borrower was slave to the lender. But I had to realize that my people were set back. My people did not get the opportunity to create the wealth that other people groups were able to here in America. So I utilize the access to credit that I have to build up goods that are going to have an economic value over time for my loved ones and I. So be mindful of these things. Stay woke. And always put your trust in the Most High. For no man knows the time nor place. No man knows the time nor place as to when Christ is going to return or when the birthing pains are really going to start increasing. So what do? We put our trust in the Most High. We always got to stay right with Him. Proverbs 3. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it comes. For Yahweh shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken. Hallelujah. All praise be to the Most High. I greatly appreciate you all for tuning into this live. If you're watching it afterwards, I greatly appreciate you for watching it. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, make sure you drop some comments. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe to the Moneypot channel. Do what you do, but we appreciate you. And until next video, make sure that you stay blessed, stay healthy, stay prayed up. Peace.